We're back for my Chapter 3 review of Final Fantasy 13. Now, I promise I've been keeping up with what's going on, but I have to say, I am so happy because when I did my Chapter 1 review video, turns out that was 2 chapters. I did Chapters 1 and 2, which makes sense because there was a lot happening for an introductory first chapter. So I thought this was a Chapter 2 video. This is a Chapter 3 video. So we're still planning on doing a video for every chapter, I guess. On occasion, there'll be 2 chapters combined if it makes sense, like it was for Chapters 1 and 2. Nevertheless, this was a pretty meaty chapter, so we're doing a video on Chapter 3 today. We have escaped Cocoon, or an attack on Cocoon, by Sanctum. We're l'Cie now. We went up against Anima, which is a foul C, and that gave us some focuses or missions that we have to complete now, or we're gonna turn into a zombie, but then if we do complete them, we become Crystal, so there's that too, and yeah, I don't know if that's a good thing either. Nonetheless, we're going to do the only thing we can, which is to press forward with our missions, which we're trying to still figure out what our focus as l'Cie is. For the time being, we're in Lake Bresha. We're going down some linear ice paths, so let's get to it. By the way, it's a good thing that when I loaded my game, they gave me this sort of summary synopsis of what's going on. I'm going to be studying these pretty much every time, I think, because, yeah, it says that we all saw a vision of Ragnarok, and I guess, yeah, I don't really remember that. I don't think they really talked about that, but that must be what all that crazy stuff at the end before we fell down to Lake Bresha was. So yeah, so we saw Ragnarok, and now we're going to be trying to stop that, I guess. That'll be fleshed out more as we go forward, I'm sure. I have to admit, I like Chapter 3 a lot better than I like the first 2 introductory chapters. Yes, we have to explain what's going on and set the stage for this world, but now that we've kind of introduced all this complicated verbiage and I've, kind of understand what a l'Cie is versus a foul C and how Sanctum is bad and Pulse is sort of this like place where people are exiled to who are becoming l'Cie or had connection to a foul C or being purged and exiled. I get this whole backdrop now, but it was a lot. It was just so much to kind of digest in those first 2 chapters. And now we're running down some linear ice paths. We're fighting enemies. We're looking for some chests off the beaten path a little bit. We're going to get to the end point, which is like this ruined temple. We're going to fight a boss and we're going to see a big cutscene and move on to Chapter 4, which will be the next video. So I can handle that a little bit better. I can finally kind of get into the meat and the potatoes of the game. We're starting to know more about gameplay and learn a little bit of some of the more nuances of the paradigm system. So that is a lot of fun at this part, and it's really, I got to give it to this game. The pacing is really good. I mean, it does get more complex, but it's really easing you along the way and kind of introducing things a little bit at a time. So we're not overly strategic or a little bit too complicated in this part, but there is some thinking to do, and it's just a fun chapter. Oh, and this is not just a walk in the park. So if you thought, because there's an auto attack system that kind of fills in your abilities for you and you just kind of launches them right off the bat, no, there is a lot more strategy than just picking abilities. You have to have the right roles for your characters, and that is where the paradigm system comes in. And believe me, if you don't, you will pay for it. Yeah, I died numerous times by the way of lightning dies as a game over. If someone else does, they're just kind of incapacitated for a little bit, and you do get your health refilled when you get out of the battle. There's not like MP or anything like that, but there are something called technical points. More on that in a minute. But yeah, I learned very quickly that I cannot just put up my offensive paradigms and wail on the A button and just have no problem. Yeah, I got absolutely crushed several times when I failed to take time to heal, when I was getting greedy with my offense. And yeah, you gotta switch to a defensive paradigm, a healing paradigm, even the offensive paradigms. You can't just wail physical attacks. You've got something called the stagger system, and that means you got this stagger bar, and you're not going to do a whole lot of damage unless that stagger bar gets filled. Maybe on some chump enemies, but you really want to hit that stagger meter and then switch back to physical attacks, and that's where you're going to be able to do a lot of damage. The thing is, to get that stagger meter up, you need to use magic attacks, which don't do a ton of damage, it seems, just on their own. Maybe they're kind of equivalent, I guess, to like just physical attacks. So you're kind of balancing doing magic attacks, getting that stagger meter up all the way, and then switching back to physical attacks, all the while making sure you survive if you're taking too much damage. You've got a tank role called Sentinel, you got your healing role, and there's even a more kind of technical role called Synergist, where you are doing support magic like Protect and Shell and that kind of thing. The gameplay and just the whole flow of combat is really what you start to get familiar with at this point in the game, after you've been introduced to some more basic systems, it starts to get a little bit more complex and nuanced now, and I can see where this is going to open up a lot more to be a more complex system as we continue to unlock more roles. They do lock you into certain party configurations right now, so kind of force you to do what you can with the variations that you have with those particular party members. But I can see where this is going to open up just a lot and become much more complex and give you a lot more customization once you're able to change out party members. And now we have the other side of the coin, which is just the sort of exploration and wandering around. How are we sort of navigating this world? And yeah, this is a really linear game, much like chapters 1 and 2. You're going to have kind of straight, narrow corridors that you're going down from beginning to the end of the level, or beginning of the end of the chapter, I guess you could say. And there's not a lot of freedom, really. I mean, you've got a main path that you're going down, and along the way, you are going to find some nooks and crannies, some kind of, alternate paths you can take for a little bit, where you can find some chests or some additional enemies before you have to kind of turn back or even loop around back to your main course. And I really enjoy this because, yeah, it is a little bit linear, and I actually kind of like that in some ways because you kind of turn your brain off and just go forward. You're not kind of overwhelmed by the sheer scale or, being able to go out and do all these different things, which is great. It's just a different kind of experience, I think. I really kind of like this linear kind of style as a kind of a breath of fresh air for Final Fantasy. I can kind of, again, just push forward and not have to think too hard about it, but it still does have some kind of interesting nooks and crannies along the way, again, where you can find a chest or some new items, extra enemies, or sometimes you'll just run into some part of the level like a train crash or some kind of downed vehicle or something, and your characters will have some extra banter or something to listen. So it just kind of helps to flesh the world out a little bit more. And believe me, you're going to want to go ahead and find those extra chests and enemies. Now, I'm not sure exactly how great some of the items are that I'm getting from these chests. I mean, if I remember correctly, a lot of these items are for crafting and upgrading your different weapons and maybe accessories as you progress through the game. So I can't do that now, so I can't even really use some of these items, and I think a lot of them I can farm later in the game anyways. However, there are some interesting weapons along the way that you will find and allow you to change up your character's playstyle depending on what kind of role you want with the paradigms. And that's one thing I really like, is you don't really have throwaway weapons. If I remember correctly, there's like no weapon that you want to actually sell. Like they are all can be leveled up to be competitive with one another. The only thing is that they literally just have a different balance of attributes that go well differently with different roles. By the time the game opens up more, you're going to have all these different weapons that you can upgrade and then customize along with your paradigms to just create a different strategy in combat for those characters. And I really like that system of not just having a weapon that you're just going to throw away later when you get one that's more powerful. Everything's just more balanced, and you're also not going to want to miss those extra enemies. Yeah, you're never really going to be, at least at this point, going to be wanting to skip enemies because you can't really grind. There's not like enemies that just come back for you to come and attack and keep leveling up your characters or your abilities at this point in the game. So you want to go and get as many enemies as you can so you can maximize the points you're putting into your paradigm roles, because you're going to be spending those points to upgrade abilities and also your character traits like your strength, your HP, magic, that kind of thing, unlock new abilities for your different paradigm roles, and you can only get those from fighting enemies. Now, I don't know if the amount of points you get changes, if you get like a 4-star rating versus a 5-star rating in combat. It's hard to kind of figure that out. Maybe you can get more points for doing better in battle. I know your technical points, or TP bar, does benefit from doing better in battle, but I haven't seen anything, at least that the game tells you, about getting more actual Crystarium points for your paradigm rolls from doing better in battle. But you do get TP points, and TP is for special abilities, or called techniques. You have regular abilities, and then you have techniques, which is like the one that I have right now is Libra, which lets you scan an enemy and get its weaknesses and resistances, so you know what the enemy is weak to in terms of its magic, and your characters will even use automatically the correct magic for that enemy if you use Libra. And I think that happens too if you just fight it over time. As you use different magic abilities, the different information of that enemy will unlock, basically. So like when you scan it, it'll show you what it's weak or resistant to based on what you've used against it. And then I think your party characters will automatically use the best magic spell or ability from that data once you've unlocked it by fighting that creature. You can also just use Libra and unlock that right away For example, that's a good thing to do against a boss, and they'll go ahead and start using whatever magic they need to damage that boss the most. Now, two things. If you're enjoying this video so far, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, because we're going through this whole game, 1 or 2 chapters at a time. Then I'm going to be doing the sequel, both sequels, Final Fantasy 13-2 and 13-3, so you're not going to want to miss that. And if you haven't already, make sure you go back and watch my chapters 1 and 2 review, starting off this Final Fantasy 13 review series. I'll put it in the end screen at the end of this video. Now, to me, the graphics have held up very well today in 2024. And I think a lot of that has to do with just the design. I mean, the character design is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I still love these characters, just the way they look, the costuming, and they have great personalities. You know, they all have their own personal motivation for what brought them into this conflict to begin with. We covered that in our last video. You know, go check that out and see my impressions, my review of the first 2 chapters of the game. But they interact really well together. I love the dynamics between them. There's some kind of butting heads going on about what's happening to them and how they should proceed forward. And we've got a Fang now. Fang has now been introduced at the end of this chapter, so that was pretty cool. I don't remember Fang being introduced as being on the enemy's side or appearing that way at any rate at this point in the story. So it'd be interesting to see how that unfolds, because I do like Fang. I'm looking forward to having her join the party. And right before we meet Fang, we did have this interesting new aspect of the game that's worth mentioning, where we actually encounter like your summons or your Aeon, whatever you want to call them. I forget what they call them. It's Eidolon. And you have the Shiva sisters here that you first encounter with Snow. And this is an interesting system, because you don't just fight these characters or fight this boss to unlock them and bring them to your side. You have something called the Gestalt meter that you have to fill up. And the game tells you that there's like special secret ways that you fill up this meter, and you can use Libra to get a clue about that. Here we had to use our Sentinel roll. So the Gestalt meter for the Shiva sisters fills up as you block and use Sentinel or tank defensive moves, and rack up chain combos that way. So as they hit you and do combos on you while you're defending, that Gestalt meter fills up until you're able to hit that X button and bring them to your side. So I haven't had a chance to actually summon them from that point forward, so I'm guessing we're going to get a chance to do that. I kind of remember when I was playing that Eidolons were not really that effective in this game, so we'll have to kind of revisit that when we get a chance to use them. We are, I think, still on Cocoon, but in different areas of it. You know, we were in this train area, and then we fell down to Lake Bresha. We get to the end of this icy path on Lake Bresha, and then we escape, and we're flying up to a foul sea that belongs to the bad guys, which are the people that purged us, or were trying to purge us. And then we, like, crash landed. I think back down to Cocoon is where we are for chapter 4, and we're split up. We got 2 party systems now. We've got Saws and Vanille, and then we've got parallel to that Lightning and Hope. So interesting, now we have like these 2 party paradigm makeups that we're using as we go out into the new path here, and that's where we are for chapter 4. Hope you enjoyed. I'll be seeing you for that chapter 4 review very soon. Thank you.